Hello, my dear ladies. Welcome back to Menopause University. My, you sure are good students. You've learned so much. And you know, the more you learn, the more you're able to connect dots to learn even more. So I am Menopause Taylor, bringing you everything you need to know about menopause. And thus far, you have learned all about the 3 diseases that are due to estrogen deficiency. They include heart attack, osteoporosis, and Alzheimer's disease. You've also learned all about the gynecologic cancers. They include endometrial uterine cancer, cervical cancer, breast cancer, and epithelial ovarian cancer. In several of the units on these diseases, you heard about the concept of density. It came up in the units on heart attack, osteoporosis, Alzheimer's, breast cancer, and epithelial ovarian cancer. But its significance was different for each disease. And in some cases, there were significant differences in the very definition of the word density. Well, whenever there's a theme that crops up again and again, I like to present it in a way that enables you to compare it between diseases. So that's what this video is all about. We will dissect the significance of density for each of the diseases of concern. In essence, we'll address the disparate determinants of density for different diseases. That's 5 words beginning with the word D. Disparate determinants of density for different diseases. Now, in my book, while you will see reference to density in each disease to which it pertains, you will not find this comparison. This is a perspective on how they differ. So this video is a bonus. So that's why you need to stay here and watch it. If you want to understand how density differs from one disease to the next, this is where you're going to get that. What I will do is address each disease, elucidating how density plays a role for that particular disease. And as we go along, we'll compare and contrast them using this little chart. The chart is super simple. There are just 3 columns. In the first column, I've listed our 5 diseases. In the second column, we'll designate the effect of high density on your risk for each disease. And in the third column, we'll designate the effect of low density on your risk for each disease. But before we start comparing the diseases, let's just dwell on the word density for a bit. If you look up the word density in the dictionary, you'll discover that it means mass per unit volume. Now, that means you need to know the meaning of the words mass and volume. And I know this seems basic, but I found that most people use these terms somewhat incorrectly, or they assume that they mean more than they actually mean. So mass is the quantity of matter in a structure. You can think of mass in terms of how meaty something is. Ages ago, there was a TV commercial on some fast food hamburgers, and the catchy phrase for putting down the competitor's hamburger was, "Where's the beef?" And the implication was that the more beef, the meatier, and the meatier, the better. But one of the things we'll be addressing today is the diseases for which meatier is better, and the diseases for which meatier is not better. In any case, you could think of mass as meaning meaty. And that brings us to the definition of the word volume. Volume refers to space. Volume is the amount of space that a structure or substance occupies. So volume ignores how meaty a structure is, and it focuses merely on how much space it occupies, regardless of whether it's meaty or airy. The air in a balloon constitutes volume, even though it's just air. And we're going to be addressing the diseases for which more volume is better and the diseases for which more volume is not better. So the word density is a combination of how much matter or meat there is in a structure and how much space the structure occupies. Obviously, some things that are very meaty and occupy a lot of space are heavy, but not always. Conversely, some things that are meaty and occupy very little space are very heavy. So while the word dense can mean heavy, it doesn't automatically mean heavy. Just be sure to use the word density to refer to meatiness and space rather than merely to weight. And with that, we can delve into the disparate determinants of density for different diseases. Okay, you first heard the term density in the unit on heart attack. When it comes to your heart, density is a word that refers to one aspect of the lipoproteins that chauffeur cholesterol around your body. So for heart attack, density is all about the vehicle. It doesn't refer to what's in the vehicle, which is cholesterol. You'll have to ignore Minnow Mouse here. I couldn't risk damaging her in attempting to extract her from this car, and she's glued in. So, getting back to lipoproteins. There are high density lipoproteins, and there are low density lipoproteins. And you learn that the meaning of the word density with regard to high and low density lipoproteins is all about the proportion of the protein to lipid, not weight. So, if you think about the car as the protein and the cholesterol as the lipid, the designation of high or low density refers to the size of the car. This represents high density lipoprotein, and this represents low density lipoprotein. The passenger for both is cholesterol, and we're using a pearl for that. Sorry, Minnow Mouse. And so we'll use this pearl as our cholesterol for both. It's the passenger for this, and the acronym for high density lipoprotein is HDL. And HDL is the healthy cholesterol. So I taught you that H is for healthy. In the unit on heart attack, I actually used this to demonstrate HDL. This is a balloon bearing a little pearl. HDL is a huge molecule of lipoprotein, which is the balloon, bearing just a little bit of cholesterol, which is the pearl inside the balloon. What I've done today is I've shifted to the analogy of a car for purposes of comparing our disparate determinants of density for different diseases. And I've done that because when it comes to your risk for heart attack, density is all about the size of the vehicle that chauffeurs cholesterol around your body. So HDL involves a large vehicle. On the other hand, the acronym for low density lipoprotein is LDL. And LDL is the unhealthy cholesterol. So I taught you that L is for lousy. In the unit on heart attack, I used this to demonstrate LDL. LDL is a tiny molecule of lipoprotein bearing a lot of cholesterol. So it's more like this tiny, tiny thing with a lot of cholesterol in it for volume. So LDL involves a small vehicle. So in the context of heart attacks, it is the low density that increases your risk of a heart attack. And it is the high density that decreases your risk of a heart attack. So high density is good and low density is bad. Let's go ahead and put this on our chart. Well, what about osteoporosis? You learn that osteoporosis itself is all about density. In the unit on osteoporosis, I went on and on about the difference between quality and quantity. Osteoporosis is all about bone quantity. Density is all about quantity. And quantity encompasses density, mass, and volume. These are the very things that comprise the definition of the word density in the first place. So, a high bone density means that you have a lot of meat in your bones, whereas a low bone density means that you do not have a lot of meat in your bones. High bone density decreases your risk for fractures that are due to osteoporosis. Low bone density increases your risk for fractures that are due to osteoporosis. So once again, we have a situation in which high density is good and low density is bad. Here it is on our chart. Next, we have Alzheimer's disease. In the Alzheimer's unit, you learn that the bigger your brain, the denser it is. And the denser it is, the heavier it is. So in the case of your brain, the word density refers to mass, volume, and weight. You learned that Alzheimer's is quite literally brain shrinkage. And a brain that has undergone shrinkage is lower in quantity, occupies less space, and weighs less. And what is the substance that contributes to the density of your brain? It's fat. The more fat in your brain, the better. When it comes to your brain, density is all about the fat. So a lot of fat in your brain is good. It makes it more dense. But only a little fat in your brain is bad. It makes it less dense. So this is a normal brain that does not have Alzheimer's. Whereas this is an abnormal brain that does have Alzheimer's. What this means is that high brain density decreases your risk for Alzheimer's, and low brain density increases your risk for Alzheimer's. So once again, high density is good, and low density is bad. Here it is on our chart. Now, what about breast cancer? In the unit on breast cancer, you learned that using my breast model here, you learned that dense breasts are breasts that consist of a high proportion of the fibrous material in comparison with the quantities of glandular and fatty tissue. It was all about how much of each. So this right here is a breast with a lot of dense fiber. That's all of this straw-like stuff. And these are breasts without a lot of dense fiber. See the big difference? Well, so when it comes to your breasts, density is all about the fiber. Well, that fibrous tissue is heavier than the glandular or fatty tissue. So dense breasts are full, firm, and heavy. But you also learned that all the risk factors that increase the likelihood of having dense breasts also increase your risk of breast cancer. These include having a lot of menstrual cycles, never being pregnant, having very few pregnancies, or breastfeeding very little or not at all. And you discovered that dense breasts increase your risk of breast cancer by 4 to 6-fold. But of course, dense breasts are a result of and a reflection of many other risk factors for breast cancer. Well, we're here to compare the disparate determinants of density for different diseases and to assess the effect that density has on your risk for each disease. And until now, high density has decreased your risk for all the diseases we've addressed thus far today. But now, with breast cancer risk, you're seeing the opposite effect. So the risk of breast cancer is higher with dense breasts like this than it is with non-dense breasts like these. That's the big difference. This means that high density is bad and low density is good. So if we add this to our chart, it changes our consistent pattern. Interesting, isn't it? And finally, we come to epithelial ovarian cancer. In that unit, you learn that there are many different kinds of both ovarian cancer in general and epithelial ovarian cancer in particular. But you learned that a general theme for ovarian cancers is one that addresses the contents of any ovarian swelling. The underlying principle was that the more solid the swelling, the more likely it is to be malignant. I taught you that ovarian cysts contain clear liquid. They consist of nothing but clear liquid. A homogeneous ovarian swelling are swellings that consist of a uniform substance, somewhere in between solid and liquid, but it's the same throughout the entire swelling. You also learned that a heterogeneous ovarian swellings consist of more than one substance. So it's not just one thing, it's all kinds of things. And a solid ovarian swelling consists of only one substance, all solid. So this means that the more solid the swelling, the higher the likelihood that it's the most serious kind of malignant epithelial ovarian cancer. Well, the more solid the ovarian swelling, the more dense it is. And the more dense it is, the higher the risk for malignancy. So when it comes to epithelial ovarian cancer, density is all about how solid the ovarian swelling is. So this kind of ovarian swelling increases your risk of epithelial ovarian cancer, whereas this kind of ovarian swelling decreases your risk of epithelial ovarian cancer. This puts epithelial ovarian cancer in line with breast cancer in terms of density. It too is the opposite of the previous diseases. High density increases your risk. Low density decreases your risk. So high density is bad and low density is good. Here it is on our chart. Don't you find these comparisons interesting? I guess we could say to be dense or to be non-dense. That is the question. And you see that it depends on the organ of interest. I just think it's good to know that the very same parameter can have completely different implications for different diseases. And I think it's also interesting that the determinants of density are disparate for different diseases. For heart attack, it's the size of the vehicle that carries cholesterol around your body. For osteoporosis, it's the quantity of bone itself. For Alzheimer's, it's the quantity of fat in your brain. For breast cancer, it's the quantity of fiber in your breasts. And for epithelial ovarian cancer, it's the quantity of solid material in an ovarian swelling. So the chart is your summary. But the bottom line is that high density is good for your heart, bones, and brain, but not for your breasts and ovaries. Okie dokie, this is where I will leave you. Now next week is a biggie. I will be presenting the WHI study from a comparative before and after perspective. And you definitely need to see that video. It will be shocking. I sure do love giving you these tutorials, and I sure would love it if I had the opportunity to meet you in person via a consultation. So schedule one at menopausetailor.me. And I sure would love for you to subscribe to both my channel and my newsletter. You can do that right here and right now. And I sure would love for you to follow me on all the social media platforms. I'm on all of them all the time. Bye, my dears.